The grand dining hall shimmered with brilliance, as if the walls themselves had been painted with liquid gold. Chandeliers sparkled above, scattering light across crystal glasses, and silver plates polished to perfection. Guests sat at long tables, covered in snow-white linen, their conversations filled with laughter, pride, and the unmistakable rhythm of wealth and influence. Men in finely tailored suits leaned back with practiced confidence, while women in gowns as elegant as flowing rivers of silk carried themselves like queens. The room echoed with privilege, but hidden beneath the polished surface, something fragile stirred. At one table near the center, the usual hum of chatter faltered. A silence so sharp it sliced through the music of the evening began to form. There sat an elderly woman, draped in a flowing black silk dress. Her hair, silver as moonlight, had been carefully swept back, yet her hands trembled slightly as they rested upon the table. She spoke softly, her lips moving with urgency, but her words met only with polite nods and confused stares. Those seated around her, powerful business leaders accustomed to commanding every room, shifted uncomfortably. Some smiled out of courtesy, others averted their gaze, pretending not to notice. What was meant to be her honor now felt like a burden. Her eyes searched desperately for connection, but none came. Her story, her pain, her memories, her identity remained locked inside her, unreachable to those who surrounded her. In that moment, despite her wealth and reputation, she looked smaller, lonelier, and heartbreakingly invisible. Before continuing, let me pause. If you believe in compassion, in the possibility of change through a single act of kindness, and in the truth that small gestures can reshape a life, take a second right now to support this message. Like this video, share it with someone who values humanity, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you know. The elderly woman was no ordinary guest. Though she had built an empire and gathered riches many could only dream of, she carried herself with the humility of someone who had seen both fortune and ruin. Invited as a guest of honor, she should have been celebrated. Instead, she sat isolated like a forgotten shadow in a room that glittered with excess. On her finger gleamed a jade ring, a delicate heirloom passed down through generations. To her, it was not just jewelry, it was a reminder of survival, of resilience, of ancestors who had endured far worse. She clutched it tightly now, almost as if the stone itself could give her strength. Yet her voice faltered, trapped behind the invisible wall of language. She spoke in her native tongue, words flowing with the urgency of someone who needed to be heard. But the faces around her only stiffened into confusion. A few guests shook their heads apologetically, others offered half smiles, and many simply looked away. This gathering had been meant to symbolize unity and collaboration, but in that moment, it revealed how easily humanity could be silenced by the inability to understand. Across the room, a young server wove gracefully between the tables. Her black uniform was modest, a simple dress paired with a white apron, her hair neatly pulled back. She carried plates with practiced balance, but her eyes carried the quiet weight of responsibility. She worked double shifts, not out of ambition, but necessity. Her mother was unwell, her younger brother still in school, and every paycheck was stretched thin to keep their fragile life afloat. She had long ago discovered that real wealth wasn't always measured in diamonds or grand feasts. Sometimes, it was simply being able to keep the lights on or place a warm meal on the table. Yet tonight, as she glanced toward the corner where the elderly woman sat, her steps faltered. She saw the tears glistening in the woman's eyes, the trembling of lips that formed words no one seemed to hear. Round her, wealthy men exchanged looks of annoyance, one even sighing as though the woman's attempt at speaking were an inconvenience. The older woman lowered her gaze, shame pressing down on her shoulders, and clutched her jade ring like a shield against humiliation. The young server froze. Something stirred inside her, a memory buried deep but never forgotten. She remembered her mother's lullabies, whispered in a language that few around them spoke. Nights filled with gentle words from another culture, stories of courage and perseverance passed down through generations. Though she had grown up far from her mother's homeland, that language still lived inside her, woven into her soul. Her heart tugged her forward. She could not ignore it. Balancing her courage more than her tray, she approached the woman. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of dropping the plates, but from the weight of the choice she was about to make. She leaned in, her voice soft, but steady, and spoke in the same language that had carried her through childhood. The elderly woman's head snapped up, her eyes widening in disbelief. Tears spilled freely now, but they were no longer tears of sorrow, they were tears of relief. She clutched the young server's hand with both of hers, as though holding onto a lifeline that had just been thrown into stormy waters. The entire table went silent. Those who moments earlier had dismissed her now stared in shock as a connection bloomed before their eyes. The elderly woman began speaking quickly, her words tumbling out like water breaking free from a dam. The server listened intently, nodding, whispering replies, and offering comfort in return. A wall that had made the woman invisible just moments earlier shattered instantly, replaced with a bridge of shared language and compassion. As the young woman translated, the truth unfolded. The guest of honor had not come to flaunt her wealth or bask in prestige. She had come with a message, one born of survival and struggle. She had rebuilt her life after losing everything to war. She had raised children alone. She had carried traditions and hopes across oceans. Her wish that evening was not to boast, but to offer wisdom, to invest in the dreams of others, to share her story so that others might find strength in it. But until that moment, her voice had been locked away, and it was the humble server, overlooked by everyone else, who had unlocked it. The room shifted. A man at the table cleared his throat, suddenly ashamed of his earlier impatience. A woman dabbed her eyes with a napkin, realizing she had dismissed the most human moment of the evening. Those who had built walls of pride and power around themselves now sat humbled, witnesses to the simple, transformative act of kindness from someone they had barely noticed. The elderly woman's gratitude poured out in trembling words. She thanked the server again and again, thanking her not just for translating, but for restoring her dignity, for making her feel seen, for reminding her she was still human. With shaking hands, she removed the jade ring from her finger and placed it gently into the young woman's palm. The server shook her head, trying to refuse, but the woman's grip was firm. This was not a gift of wealth. It was a similar reminder that compassion is worth more than fortune. The rest of the evening changed. Where there had been distance, warmth now filled the air. Where there had been silence, laughter and stories began to flow. The young server translated with patience and care, her presence no longer invisible, but central to the night. She had become a bridge between two worlds, proof that the language of kindness requires no translation. But the impact went further than that. One evening, the elderly woman insisted on meeting the server's family. She arranged for her mother's medical treatment, ensured her brother's education would be secured, and lifted burdens the young woman had carried alone for far too long. All of it because in one fragile moment, the server chose to whisper words that no one else could. Life often offers us these intersections, moments where we must decide will we turn away or lean closer, will we ignore someone's pain or choose to see it. Sometimes, the ones with the least to give are the very ones who change everything through the courage to act. With compassion. In the days that followed, word of the encounter spread. People did not speak of the expensive wine or the luxury of the dinner, but of the connection between an elderly guest and a humble server. They spoke of the courage it took for one to step forward when everyone else looked away, and they remembered that greatness is never measured in titles or fortune, but in the willingness to see another's humanity. If this story has moved you, take a moment now to keep its message alive. Like this video, share it with someone who may need reminding that kindness breaks down barriers, and subscribe so you never miss more stories that restore faith in humanity. And in the comments below, tell us if you ever witnessed kindness break through walls that nothing else could. Your story matters, and sharing it spreads light even further. As the evening drew to a close, the elderly woman and the young server walked side by side, hand in hand. On the young woman's finger glimmered the jade ring, faint but steady, a symbol of everything that had been restored that night. They came from different generations, different worlds, yet in that moment, they were bound not by wealth or status, but by the unshakable truth that kindness spoken in any language has the power to heal the deepest loneliness. And so, under the golden glow of the chandeliers, two souls reminded an entire room of what the world so often forgets, that humanity does not begin with riches or words, but with the courage to see and the compassion to understand.